Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I wanted to do a deep dive into a cartridge that came 50 years too early. A cartridge that was never really given a fair chance by the journalists back in the day. A cartridge that was ultimately killed off by the big green marketing of the 60s. In today's video, we're going to look at the 264 Winchester Magnum, and we're going to see how it stacks up to the new 6.5 cartridges. Year 1958. Winchester co-introduced two cartridges, one for the lower 48 and one as a Alaskan cartridge. The cartridge for the lower 48 was this guy, the 264 Winchester Magnum. And I think Hornady says it very well: belted, hot, and powerful. Winchester's idea was that this could be the do-it-all North American cartridge that could take deer, antelope, elk, maybe even moose, and black bear. The parent case to the 264 Winchester Magnum and the Alaskan 338 Winchester Magnum is the 458 Winchester Magnum that came out 2 years previously. And the parent case to the 458 Winchester is the 375 H&H. So this is a very well-known case design that a lot of cartridges have copied from the H&H family. Let's see what the performance is like. Now, back in 1958, I believe this was the fastest 6.5mm cartridge. Now, let's just start with a 130 grain bullet, 3,200 feet per second. That's moving. And then a 140 grain bullet is at 3,050 feet per second. Other books have it closer to 3,100 feet per second. So this is a really good performing cartridge. In fact, it has just about identical performance, and honestly, I think it could do a little bit faster than a very popular cartridge today, the 6.5 PRC. So the 6.5 PRC with a 130 grain bullet, 3,200, the exact same. A 140 grain bullet, 3,150. However, I have my doubts. My dad has a 24-inch 6.5 PRC, and he's getting nowhere close to 3,150. He's getting around 2,970 in a max load of H1000. The whole point I'm trying to say is the 264 Winchester Magnum matches 6.5 PRC performance, and it's pretty much a dead cartridge, the 264 Win Mag. I believe there are two main reasons why the 264 Winchester Magnum is almost a dead cartridge, and it certainly is just about dead, unfortunately. So the first reason is the gun writers of the time, when it released in the first few years and years after, basically called it a barrel burner, and that you're not going to get great barrel life, so what's the point of getting it? I think that scared a lot of people away from it. I also think they were over-exaggerating. I think the barrel life, while it's not good, it's not terrible either. I mean, let's think about it. I mean, a bunch of the Weatherby cartridges had been out by 1958. But yeah, this definitely has better barrel life than a lot of the Weatherby cartridges. So I think it was given fair media attention, you could say, in the day. I just want to give you an example of how the journalists back then just weren't giving it a fair shake. So a certain extremely popular cartridge nowadays, the 6.5 PRC, shoots the same bullets, the exact same velocity. Now, admittedly, the 6.5 PRC does have a smaller case, and so it's not burning as much powder, so it's a little bit more efficient. No one ever has accused the 6.5 PRC to be a barrel burner, but I mean, it's not that far off from the 264 Winchester Magnum. Reason number two, which is what I believe to be the main reason the 264 Winchester Mag is barely around right now, is 4 years later, Remington introduced the Remington 700 rifle and their new cartridge, the 7mm Remington Magnum. Now, for those not familiar with the 7 Remington Magnum, it has the exact same case as a 264 Winchester Magnum, but necked up to 7mm. So, naturally, you're going to be able to shoot heavier bullets, you're going to have longer barrel life, and it's a more versatile cartridge. And it absolutely killed the 264 Winchester Magnum. The Remington 700 rifle and this 7mm Remington Magnum did so much damage to Winchester. You know, you had the Model 70, it was a classic, it's the rifleman's rifle. But here comes the Remington 700 that's cheap, that works. It's not as classy, but it just works. And Winchester was thrown for a loop. They changed their design for their Model 70s, and I'm sure you've heard of, well, is it a Model 70 pre-64? Because Winchester wanted to try to compete with the Remington 700 by making it a push feed, and I think that kind of backfired on them pretty badly. Now let's look at the performance down range, the ballistic chart. Today we are using a 130 grain AccuBond long range with a BC of 0.530. Now, why am I not using a high BC bullet in the 140 grain class? Well, only factory offerings available in 264 Winchester Magnum, the highest twist rate is a 1 in 9. So, can't shoot the really high BC bullets. So, with that in mind, we have at the muzzle 3,200 feet per second and 2,956 foot-pounds of energy. Really, you could think of this as very similar to a 270 Winchester with a lot more powder burning. Now, let's just go out to 400 yards like I always do. Bullets almost going 2,500 feet per second and almost 1,800 foot-pounds of energy. But check out the drop. It is quite flat. So as Hornady said, it is a powerhouse. It's very flat and only 20.64 inches of drop. So let's see how this old, out-of-date cartridge compares to the new 6.5s. Okay, so let's just get this out of the way. It was really hard for me to find factory ammo with them all using the exact same bullet. So we're going to use bullets that are around the same weight. So starting with the cream of the crop, I'm being a little sarcastic, the 6.5 Creedmoor with the 130 grain at 2,825 feet per second, energy 2,303 foot-pounds. Let's take this out to 400, has 1,365 foot-pounds and 28 inches of drop. Not bad, but not good. 6.5 PRC. Now, I've got the asterisks there because this one was the hard one. I couldn't really find a comparable 130 grain bullet. So I used a 127 grain Barnes LRX. It has a muzzle velocity of 3,010 feet per second, energy of 2,555 foot-pounds, and then at 400, 1,426 foot-pounds of energy, and 24.9 inches of drop. Let's go to 264 Winchester Magnum with a 130 grain AccuBond. So the BC on this AccuBond is not as good as the LRX, FYI. It's going a bit faster, 3,100 feet per second, 2,773 foot-pounds of energy. And so your energy at 400, 1,482 foot-pounds. So even though it's going a bit faster, that BC is not the greatest. But still over an inch of drop less than the 6.5 PRC. Moving on, 6.5 Weatherby RPM, a 130 grain Swift Sirocco. And yes, I do make mistakes when I write this stuff down, but it is indeed, velocity is 3,150 and 2,864 foot-pounds. Your energy. It's a bit more because that Swift Sirocco has a pretty darn high BC, 1,800 foot-pounds and about a little over 2 inches more drop, less drop, than a 264 Win Mag. I thought I'd throw in the 270 Winchester. As I said previously, it's actually pretty close to 264 Winchester performance. A 130 grain at 3,060 feet per second, 2,702 foot-pounds of energy, and 1,478 foot-pounds. They're basically identical. And the 270's burning a whole lot less powder, 24 inches a drop. And finally, I had to throw in the 65300 Weatherby with the 130 grain Swift Sirocco at 3,425 feet per second, 3,386 foot-pounds of energy, and at 400 yards, 2,156 foot-pounds and only 17 inches of drop.